Hi, everyone. Long time since we've done a video here on Beyond the 90. I hope everyone is safe if you're here in the state of Florida after both Helene and Milton, or actually for Helene if you're in North Carolina, Tennessee, or Georgia as well. Been an excruciating experience for many in this state, including the Tampa Bay Rowdies, who we cover closely and who I'm connected to closely. So difficult time for the Rowdies, and obviously they don't have a home venue that's suitable right now to play in, and as we approach the end of the USL season. So keep them in your thoughts. And remember that in your analysis of what happens on the pitch if you cover USL, as we do at this site. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about international football and the development of the international game in recent years. For years, club football attracted the best coaches, and I think a lot of fans and media people would get annoyed at international breaks, and we're kind of annoyed at international football, although they get into the international football tournaments. So what we have now is a situation where you have four very high-profile club coaches, Julian Nagelsmann, Marcelo Bielsa, Mauricio Pochettino, and Thomas Tuchel, take high-profile international jobs. Now, only one of those men, Julian Nagelsmann, is managing their native country, Germany. In the case of Bielsa and Pochettino, they continue a long tradition of Argentine managers managing other national teams within the Americas. In the case of Thomas Tuchel, his appointment by England, fairly unprecedented to see a German manager there, although Ralf Rangnick was considered for the England job once upon a time. So that was another German who, of course, now manages Austria. That's another really high-end club manager, actually, that's managing a national team. We've had some in the last 20 years. Altmar Hitzfeld managed Switzerland for a number of years, which was big-time club coach. But generally, the best coaches have stayed away from international football because you're, as a manager, wanting to work with players day in and day out and implement your system and your playing principles in a squad. And I think particularly of managers like Bielsa, Pochettino, and Tuchel, who have styles associated with them, styles of play associated with them. Nagelsmann, too, actually. Nagelsmann managed Red Bull. He's not necessarily a Red Bull disciple coach. I think he had a more pragmatic side when he was in Leipzig that the Rangnick disciples don't necessarily have. But still, he does have some tactical DNA. It's very difficult when you're seeing players once a month or once every 2 months to impart this. So why is this happening? I want to address that in this video and also mention I have personally a little bit of a discomfort with the direction the U.S. men have gone, and have generally lost interest in the U.S. men's national team because as someone who is an advocate for local soccer, someone who is an advocate for domestic soccer, who obviously spends so much of my time around USL, NISA, NPSL, and now the League for Clubs, right? Grassroots football. And to me, football is about two things: supporters and local culture. And football clubs and football should reflect the local culture and should reflect local communities. And it is a community sport more than the franchise sports of the U.S. sports. And now cricket has become a franchise sport also. Cricket teams that play in certain places are not reflective at all of the culture of the places they play. So that's maybe even worse than the American professional sports. But this is part of why in American sports I'm a college sports fan, because you look my university of Florida, our football team, majority of players have always come from Florida. Basketball team, we've always had a lot of good local players. University of Miami, who I've followed for many years, also support. I didn't go to school there. I went to school at UF. I'm a Gator, but also a Cane in a sense, Cane fan. Look, those great teams they had, 80s and 90s and 2000s. The bulk of those players were from south of I-4. And the majority of that bulk came from Dade, Broward, Palm Beach counties, right? It was a very local team. So that's the community orientation of college sports and of global football. And that's kind of changed. And with the U.S. men's national team, I'm not a nativist, I'm not a xenophobe, but I do have kind of a problem with all of these players that didn't grow up in this country, representing this country, while we have guys that have come through our academy system, that have grown in our system, that have come through MLS or USL academies or other places and played adult amateur football and adult amateur soccer, not having a chance to represent the national team. So that to me, that bothers me. But I'm coming to accept with these coaching appointments we're about to talk about that there is a mercenary nature of international football that is reality, and that club football in this era where, I mean, we can talk about club football here in the States where most USL teams, most MLS teams, and obviously League for Clubs, NPSL, NISA are owned by people locally. But that's not the case globally anymore. Globally, we have so many football clubs that are, I know the stereotype is, they're owned by nation states and petrodollars. That's certainly true in some cases, Manchester City, PSG, Newcastle. But I think what's more problematic is the takeover of historic clubs in Europe by venture capitalists, by hedge funds, and by moneyed interests that have no connection to the local community. And I think when we talk about these managers, and I would put Tuchel in particular on this list, there becomes a time where you might be a big club manager. You may be one of the best managers in the world, which he is, which I believe Pochettino is too, by the way. And you get sick of reporting to a board of money men and women. You get sick of having a director of football that's been appointed because they're a former player at the club, or they are a friend of the owner or the friend of some investor, meddling in your selection decisions, picking the players for you. I think this was very much an issue for Pochettino at Chelsea. He did a great job with that squad, but really didn't have any input into who they were bringing in, or enough input. And maybe international football is a place you can retreat to. No, you don't get the day in and day out interaction with players to develop them, but you do have the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to pick this guy, and there isn't going to be a board of governors or some money person or some director of football who happened to play for Borussia Dortmund. By the way, that was a problem Tuchel had at Dortmund, right? All the former players there, that are going to pick the team for me and tell me who I have to play and who I don't have to play. So I think this is a growing trend that we're seeing. Ranić, I mentioned also with Austria, right? So that's 5 if you include, and Ancelotti almost took the Brazil job, or did take it and then backed out. Maybe in the future he'll manage Italy, which would be wonderful, I think. With Spalletti managing Italy, I mean, top club manager. So more and more, because for many, many years, I know there are people who love international football who say, it's the best, and, why are you so obsessed with what Bayern Munich does or Borussia Dortmund? But for many, many years in the coaching profession, and I've been around a lot of coaches, the view was if you took an international job, you couldn't get a top club job, or you were washed up at the club level. Now that is changing, and I think that whether it's a good thing or a bad thing can be argued about, but I think it's certainly a shift in the game. And I think it has a lot to do with the sorts of people and money involved in the big-time club game in Europe. And I think we'll be involved in the club game in the United States more and more as we go forward, because I think the NASL lawsuit is going to trial in January. My expectation is the pro league standards either get chucked or that they are reformed. And I think at that point, you're going to begin to see the ability for venture capitalists, for hedge funds, for conglomerates to buy clubs in MLS and USL and even change the feel of those leagues. So anyway, interesting times for sure.